Welcome to the Conference Championship edition of Review and Preview. Another week of Amin and myself. I'm Tom Scavetta, joined alongside Amin Kasawi. Amin, you've been up for about 45 minutes. Talk to us. What's been going on with your day? What's been going on with your week? You've been up late doing a lot of stat digging.
Oh God. So yeah, I'm on Aussie Open duty for the last 2 weeks. It ends on Sunday. So while everyone is, going nuts with NFL, I've been living like a opposite schedule because I'm on Aussie time. So yesterday the semifinal match with Sinner ended around like 10 a.m. or no, 9 a.m. And then I had to write the recap and send it to all the people who needed to see it before, to get it in time for social and all that. So I've been awake for about, I don't know, an hour, but I've been awake for like 48 of the last 49 hours, really.
There you go.
So I look like a zombie, but nothing I'd rather be doing than talking NFL Conference Championship weekend with you, my friend.
Powering through. Also, quick shout out to my Fighting Irish national runners up. Brutal loss Monday night, but they made it a game. A lot of respect to Notre Dame and the national champions, Ohio State University. Ugh, sounds disgusting coming out of my mouth, but it is what it is.
Big Ten world now.
Yeah. It was a crazy season, but on to the NFL, folks. Let's talk about some divisional round recap. Amin, quickly, what went through your mind? Were there any results that surprised you? Obviously, there was one big one that I feel like both of us are going to hit on.
I swear to you, last week when we were doing this, I wanted to pick the Commanders. I wanted to because I picked them the week before, and it was like the heart and head. My head was telling me, no, the Lions aren't going to lose this game. They're home. They're the 1 seed, 15-win team. So I picked them, and I shouldn't have because my gut was telling me that the Commanders were going to do it, and they did it. Jaden Daniels, this kid just keeps doing it week after week after week. A top two pick doing this in his first season with a team that hasn't been to the conference championship since 1991, back when the Bills were, on their like four straight Super Bowl, like ages ago. And that might be the Super Bowl again this year, actually. Amazing to see that. The Chiefs, no surprise. That game went exactly as I thought it would go. The Bills game was a classic. And at the end, I'm sorry, I'm going to shit on him today, but Mark Andrews blew the game. He is a great tight end, one of the best in the league, one of the top three tight ends, probably with Kittle and Kelsey. But what a time to choke. Like, I mean, in the divisional round, the fumble, first of all, which gave the ball back to the Bills. Then Lamar drives you down this long, I think it was an 80-yard drive, gets the touchdown. His offensive line were playing out of their mind on that drive. Some of those clips, Lamar was just standing there, it seemed like for an hour. And then all you need is a 2-point conversion. It's in your breadbasket, and he drops it. Now, listen, I couldn't have caught it. I'm no athlete, so who am I to talk? But he's a professional. That's what he signed up for. And then I thought it was a very weak move on his part not to talk to the media after the game. And then the next day, on Monday, when they clear out their lockers, he didn't talk to the media again. He should have stood up there like a man and said, listen, it happened. I'm sorry. I'm going to do better. So I was very disappointed in Mark Andrews. He was the story of the weekend for me. And then what was the other game? What am I missing? The fourth game. Oh,
Eagles.
Eagles. The best game of the weekend, actually, in the snowstorm. What a classic game. I'm really happy for the city of Los Angeles with what they're going through, that their team really showed up and balled out. It just happened to be at the end that the Eagles defense and their ground game was too strong for Philly, for LA.
Yeah, I agree with you on three of the games. I think the one where I'm going to agree with you and disagree with you is the Ravens-Bills game. Nobody wants to talk about this. And yes, Mark Andrews deserves a lot of the blame, but Lamar Jackson deserves a lot of the blame for their loss on Sunday night. He had two turnovers that were very, very costly. And all in all, he turned it around. He got them back in the game. I'm not blaming him for that last drive in the fourth quarter. He was remarkable. He's an MVP candidate. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But when you turn the ball over like that twice in a playoff game, you are not going to win. You are getting paid also a lot of money to play that quarterback position and win Super Bowls. And if you can't even get to Kansas City, that's going to come back down on you a little bit. So I'm equally placing the blame on Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, maybe even a little more on Lamar here because he's the quarterback. He's the quarterback. And yeah, Mark Andrews dropped the pass and, not talked, Daniel Jones would have never done that. He would have talked to the media. But I do agree with you. Mark Andrews, it's tough. I mean, right after the game, sure, I get it. But the day after, you want to address your flaws.
You should also blame John Harbaugh because they went for
You can.
two the first time. And if they had just kicked the field goal, they wouldn't have needed the 2 point the second time. Coaches are always chasing those points. Bill Belichick never did that. If you remember,
Tom
he's
Coughlin,
probably the
too.
best coach ever. He'd kick the field goal, he wouldn't chase the points until he had to. So I agree with you that
Spot on.
Lamar gets blamed, but also Harbaugh.
Spot on with that point. Too many coaches follow the analytics and chase points nowadays. In college, maybe, but in NFL, that's going to get you fired, in my personal opinion. Um, Damn, I'm fired up. Let's get on to our next segment. The NFL head coaching carousel is in full swing. Last week, we only knew of the Mike Vrabel news, him heading to the New England Patriots. 2 days after the Lions lose the NFC divisional round playoff game, they lose their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, to a division rival Chicago Bears. Just 38 years old, served as the Lions offensive coordinator for the past 3 seasons, and it's very unfortunate. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought Detroit was winning the Super Bowl this year. I said it. I was wrong. They had the top-ranked offense in the league. They set multiple records, most 40-point games without any turnovers this year, with 5. Highest points per game in franchise history. The Lions also became the second team, just the second team in NFL history to produce 4 different players with over 1,000 scrimmage yards. First to ever do it with 2 wide receivers and 2 running backs. He's been with Detroit since 2019. He's moved up, and damn, it's a shame that Detroit loses him. He joins a Chicago team that has some offensive prowess, and Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and of course Caleb Williams, a quarterback who was sacked 68 times last year. So hopefully the Ben Johnson hire helps him out and the rest of that Chicago franchise.
Yeah, he's a good OC. The last 3 years that he's been with Detroit, they've ranked top 5 in scoring all 3 years. As you mentioned, this year they were number 1. But then you look at the Bears. I'm so down on the Bears. And listen, we see with the Commanders, it could turn around in 1 year if you get the right coach, the right QB, the right someone. I just think the Bears are such a black hole in the NFL right now. They seem like a cursed franchise, like the NFC version of the Raiders almost. And I just can't imagine him going there and changing it with that. You mentioned some of the guys they have. I wasn't sold on Caleb this year. Like he was good enough, I guess, especially in the beginning of the season. But after the first 4 or 5 weeks, he really tailed off. I mean, look at Detroit and Chicago. If you do a quick comparison, points per game, 33 to 18, yards, 409 to 283, QBR, 69 to 46. That is a huge gap between those teams. And the talent that he was working with in Detroit was top notch the last 3 years. It wasn't like he was developing, raw guys. These guys were ready to go. Amon-Ra, Goff has been good from before. So I wonder how it's going to go in Chicago. If I had to guess, I don't think he's going to do a great job. We've seen the Bears have like 12 coaches in the last 20 years or something, which is absurd. Nagy to Eberflus, it's just one after the other. They all come in with these expectations and they never materialize anything substantial. So, yeah, he was a good OC, but the fact that he's going to that team and the expectations in Chicago, which is a very win now city, I don't think it's going to go well for him.
So I do agree with you. But I think it's less about Ben Johnson and more about the Chicago Bears organization. If I was Ben Johnson, I'm not taking that job because the NFC North is a disaster right now. If I was Ben Johnson, I would have looked at the Jacksonville Jaguars for three reasons. A, they play in the AFC South, a division that has one good team. One good team. The other two teams are incompetent at the quarterback position, and that's a problem. Secondly, they have a franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who, say what you want about him, he's been hurt, he's been banged up, he's good, he has the skill set um, to be a great quarterback in this league. And thirdly, it's a low market city. There's going to be a lot less media pressure on you compared to Chicago. So, no, I don't love this hire for Chicago. I would have preferred to have even seen Ben Johnson go to the Saints, honestly. That might have been a good destination as well. Um, it's not the worst place he could have gone. Look, he could have picked the Jets or the Raiders, but it's certainly not the best. All the best to Ben Johnson, but you got two great head coaches in that division with Dan Campbell and Kevin O'Connell. Um, and personally, I don't think Caleb Williams is a long-term franchise quarterback. We are now in the year 2025. In the year 2030, I don't know if Caleb Williams is still wearing a Chicago Bears uniform, in my personal opinion. But I hope we're both wrong because I really do like Ben Johnson. He seems motivated. He seems determined. They have to fix the trenches big time if Caleb has a chance next season. Yeah. Next up, let's talk about our little brother, the New York Jets, hiring Aaron Glenn as their next head coach, the Lions defensive coordinator, a first-round draft pick by the Jets in 1994. He played there through the 2001 season. Fun fact, he was not released or let go. He was part of that expansion draft, and he was, unfortunately for the Jets, selected by the Houston Texans. Served as the
Fortunately for him
Lions.
too.
Yeah. Served as the Lions DC the last 4 seasons. They finished 7th in points per game allowed. I mean, the Jets interviewed 16 people for their head coaching job. 16. They were that desperate. They did prevent him from getting on with the Saints. Is Aaron Glenn another Rob Salah, or is there hope for him? Can he turn the Jets, in my personal opinion, another black hole franchise around?
Well, he's a defensive-minded guy. He's got the defensive background as a coach and as a player, obviously. I like the hire for them because he's one of their guys, so the city will be quick to embrace him if there's any level of success coming at the gates. The problem with the Jets, it's like, what are they going to do at QB? What's going to happen with Rodgers? They have talent on defense and they have weapons on offense. It's just last year, it just all fell apart. They should never have fired Robert Saleh at the point when they did. It just the wheels came off after that. So Glenn's main task coming out the gate is going to be getting that defense to play the way it did under Saleh at the beginning of this year and especially the last 2 years. Uh, and I think he can do that. I think they just Woody Johnson's got to be patient. You can't expect this. The Jets have pieces, but how well they fit and how well they play on the field is a different story. The players I think are going to believe in him because of his background, because he was an all pro level player. If people don't know, they might not know the name. You mentioned his background. Like this guy made I think 3 or 4 Pro Bowl teams with the Jets in the late '90s. So uh, a really good player. And let's see how he does as a coach. I like the hire. I just think the Jets have so many issues in terms of personnel and getting those pieces to work together. And the main thing Glenn's got to do, first of all, is I guess I don't even know if this is his decision or if it's going to be above his pay grade, but what's happening with Aaron Rodgers? If he retires, we know it's over. If he decides to come back, are the Jets going to want him back? Or do they look for a QB? Do you know what their draft pick is? I know it's not like top 5 or anything, but
They're top 10. I want to say they're 6 or
top 10.
7
Okay.
in the order.
So they're not going to get like a franchise level quarterback in the draft. So I assume they'll go defense or O line with the pick. But yeah, you gotta have a good signal caller in the
7.
modern NFL. 7th? Okay. So yeah, you're not getting Shadur, you're not getting anyone like that or Ward.
No.
So what do you do? Do you try to stick it out with Rodgers for another year? Do you look for another guy? I don't know, but I do like the hire overall.
Um, yeah, I mean, he deserves a shot, but I don't think it's going to work out, unfortunately, because the Jets are just a revolving door of head coaches. For his case, I think he has potential to be a player's coach, a guy that players really want to play for and change the culture. But as long as Aaron Rodgers and Woody Johnson are part of the Jets organization, they're not going to have that much success. Especially when you have a team like the Buffalo Bills, who's won the division the last several years. The New England Patriots, they got their quarterback, they got their head coach, in my opinion, with a proven track record. And then you still have the Miami Dolphins, who, say what you want about them. They're in the mix every year to be a wild card team. So until proven otherwise, I think regardless of who the Jets hire, the personnel is going to be more in question. And the fact that they hired a head coach before a general manager is a major red flag for me, unless they were a package deal. They just announced they hired the Broncos assistant GM earlier this morning.
Oh, okay.
My issue with that is Darren Moogie is his name. Uh, was Aaron Glenn forced upon him? That's what I want to know, right? Look what Washington did last year. They built it from scratch, from ownership. I think the Jets have to do that and follow that model if they're going to get back to competency, in my personal opinion. Um,
Agreed.
that's no knock against Aaron Glenn. It's just the reality of the situation. But next up, another organization who's been in turmoil the last couple of seasons, especially this week, the Jacksonville Jaguars hire Liam Coen as their next head coach, the Tampa Bay Bucks offensive coordinator, a guy who worked wonders with Baker Mayfield this past season. Baker was regarded as a keyword borderline top 5 quarterback in the league this year. He was certainly top 10 this season. Um, he signed with an extension to return with the Bucks as their OC on Wednesday, one of the highest paid OCs in the league, and withdrew his name from the Jaguars head coaching search. Shad Khan, personally, I think he's a good guy, but he's just not that smart of an owner, right? He had to fire Trent Baalke a day after Liam Coen withdraws his name from the head coaching search in order to get him. Otherwise, they were going to be forced to hire Rob Salah, most likely, as their head coach. And I don't think that's what Shad Khan wanted to do. I think it's the right hire for them, but I think it's kind of a douche move to say you're going to stay with the Bucks and then go back to the Jaguars. I feel like Liam Cohen was playing chess and Shad Khan was playing checkers.
Yeah, I find the whole situation to be laughable on all the parties. Cohen had a good year with the Bucks this year, but I just don't see him as this like franchise, especially a franchise like Jacksonville, who are such a crappy franchise historically and especially recently. They got a good quarterback, a young guy in Lawrence, but I don't understand why Liam Cohen is this like, oh, we have to get this guy. You know what I mean? I just don't see it. Yes, he had a good season with Baker, but Baker was, he wasn't bad before he got Liam Cohen. It's not like he transformed like the way Darnold did or anything. He took the Browns to the playoffs. He beat Pittsburgh in a playoff game once upon a time when he was with Cleveland. So I think it was more about Baker than him, to be quite honest. I know it's a little bit of both always, but also the whole, all right, I'm taking this job with Tampa. I'm going to stay with you guys. And then the way from all the reports, it's that he ghosted them. He didn't even give them the courtesy of hey, I'm reneging. I'm going against my word. I know I said I was going to come back, but they made me an offer. Not even to have the class to say that to them. To me, that's such, as you said, a douche move, low class, and I think it speaks to character. And when you see something like that, the most famous example is, of course, Bill Belichick taking the Jets job and resigning a day later. And of course, it was the right choice in hindsight. But at the time, you wouldn't have known that. So maybe Liam Cohen is going to go to the Jaguars and create a 6-time Super Bowl champion for all I know. I wouldn't bet on it, is what I'm saying. In terms of on the field, Trevor Lawrence this past season, QBR 2.3, Baker Mayfield 80.2, dead last versus third in the NFL. So can he ignite Lawrence? We'll see. But I just didn't. I was turned off by the entire process when I was reading the reports, and it's not like, to me, he's not some hot shot young. He's not like Sean McVay when he was a hot young assistant that you got to have. To me, it just looks weak.
Fair enough. And to provide some clarity to the situation, per Greg Allman of Fox Sports, Cohen's extension with the Bucks was going to make him one of the highest paid OCs in the league with an annual salary close to $4.5 million. This was Wednesday. So now you owe this man, I don't know what the logistics of the contract are, but let's say they owe him that full $4.5 million. You were a day too soon to jump. Yeah, a day's worth is what cost you $4.5 million. If that's the case, we're assuming that might be the case. We don't know, but that's awful. That's awful business by Tampa Bay. That's awful business by Liam Coen. Shad Khan, you should have fired Trent Baalke from the get-go, along with Doug Peterson, to avoid this situation. Now you have a head coach, and you don't have a GM. That's a big problem. But I will say, I think Jacksonville needs to heavily address the offensive line. Not a good situation there. But I think Liam Coen could definitely do wonders. From a football standpoint with Trevor Lawrence, I think this could be a good destination for him, considering the division that they do play in. Lastly, at 74 years of age, Pete Carroll continues to string along, signs a 3-year deal with an option for a 4th season with the Las Vegas Raiders to be their next head coach. I mean, what are your thoughts on this hire and what this means for Las Vegas?
I hate it. I absolutely hate this hire for a multitude of reasons. But and look at the teams we're talking about: the Jets, the Raiders, the Jaguars. It's all the crappy teams who are always crappy. They're
Yeah.
always changing head coaches, and it never works out for these teams. And it's like you mentioned, like, oh, they have a GM, but they don't have a coach. They have a coach, but they don't have, it's always something. The Raiders, with Tom Brady as one of their new minority owners, hiring a 74-year-old Pete Carroll, thinking that that's going to be the answer to turn them around. No freaking chance. He was a great college coach. He was a great professional coach, won a national championship and a Super Bowl. I think it's him, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer. That's the list of guys who have done that. So he's got the pedigree. I'm not saying he's a bad coach by any means. He's a great coach, but he's 74 years old. He just got fired from the Seahawks. He was the Seahawks after that pick at the 1 yard line by Malcolm Butler in that Super Bowl versus New England, which was 10 years ago. After that, they didn't accomplish jack, and they had talent. That defense was strong. He had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Wilson. They just never could get over the hump and get over that call, which was his call to throw the ball instead of running it for the Super Bowl. And his career just did this after that. You know, there were a couple of playoff seasons, sure, but they were never a team that was in contention again. And at 74 years old, with a team that has been bad since 2002, if you're watching this, 2002, you might not even have been alive if you're watching this, was the last time the Raiders meant anything in the NFL. Instead of going with a young coach and giving him time to develop and actually drafting well, getting a good quarterback, building up a defense, building up a culture of winning, they go with a 74-year-old head coach. How 3-year contract? What is he going to do in these 3 years? I don't like the hire. I get that he's a legendary coach. I get that he's accomplished a lot, but to me, it reeks of to me, it reeks of I just can't stop. It's like an addiction for these guys, like Belichick. 6 Super Bowls, all this acclaim, and he goes to North Carolina to coach college football after doing it on the highest level for 40 years. These guys, once you get to a certain point, and I'm not being an ageist, it's just you've done it, you've accomplished a lot. Let someone else have a turn.
Right.
So I'm not a fan of this hire. The Raiders suck. They're going to continue to suck.
And that division's crazy. You got Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Jim Harbaugh all as head coaches in that division with, I'll be honest, three good quarterbacks. And you have to throw Bo Nix in the mix as well. He looked good this past year. You know, Justin Herbert had an awful playoff game, but he's still good. And then, of course, you have Patrick Mahomes, who's the NFL golden standard right now. Yeah, look, I want to see who he hires as his offensive coordinator. I think that will be very telling. I think he is a bridge head coach. I think he's going to be there for 2 to 3 years. And let me just correct myself. He'll be 74 in September, but still, he's old. And
He'll be the oldest coach in NFL history. I just read
yeah,
that.
yep, yeah, he's older than Belichick right now. That's what's crazy about this whole thing. Um, But look, they have some good young pieces there. Like Brock Bowers is a solid
Yeah.
player. Jacoby Myers, decent number 2 receiver. Zamir White, who they drafted last year. That Colton Miller at left, but they need to get a quarterback in the room, and they won't be able to do it this year. I would not be shocked if Russell Wilson ends up in Las Vegas this year with Pete Carroll, and they try to. Yeah, I'm dead
Really?
serious. I think it's a real possibility. But we will see what happens. Best of luck to Pete Carroll and the Las Vegas Raiders. Follow-up question. Should coordinators on playoff teams be allowed to interview for head coach gigs before their team's season is over? Quick yes or no. I mean, personally, because I think it might have impacted the result of the Detroit Washington game a little bit.
No, should they be allowed? Yes, because it's a free and open market. Should
Sure.
they do it? No. Like if you're the
Got it.
OC on a team, you tell the team that wants to interview, if you want me bad enough, wait to interview me. And I know it might cost you the gig, but you have a responsibility to the team, coaches, and players you're with now. That's your job. And
Right.
it just leads to your players thinking, oh, he's got a foot out the door kind of thing.
Absolutely. Fair enough. I just wanted your thoughts. I agree. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury declined interviews until Washington's season is up, and now they're in the NFC Championship game. So, I do fully agree with that.